Hey, it's Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. Today we have a special guest, and this is his second time on this show. Wait a minute. I think makes him the first person who's ever been on this show twice. And this is like twice in 2 weeks. Won't you welcome from the Falling Doves? Can you see that? Yeah, the Falling Doves. Mr. Chris Leva. Yay!
Nice to see everybody up here. It's nice to be back here again with you, Mike.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And why it's so great to have you is you just came back from a successful tour of Japan.
That was so much fun, man.
And I was just so blown away that you basically arranged this entire tour by yourself.
Yeah, in the last interview I was telling you a little bit about myself. For those of you that are just tuning in, besides an artist and musician, just like Mike, because a lot of people don't know that Mike actually lived and worked in LA for a long time. Actually worked out there with Rodney Bingenheimer. And one of the things that you remember is that when you're living in LA, you got to take lots of different jobs. I think I must have been about 1920, so I was doing so many different things. And the thing about the opportunities I got, I was always available to take them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're 19, 20, 21, what do you got to do? So when someone goes, hey man, can you do this? Yeah, sure. Hey, come over to this studio. Hey, we're going to this meeting. Hey, and I got to chum up with a lot of record label people, a lot of people in agencies, and I was always so curious on the business side of stuff, because that's the thing. Artists never really ask about that stuff. They ask about recording, they ask about other artists, they ask about the process, but the business stuff like PR, marketing, contracts, and you get a lot of people when you're younger, especially the older, like Jewish lawyers and those type of cats. They'll go, this guy's pretty interesting. Okay, you know what, son, come over tomorrow at 2:00. I got help me some paper, and I showed up. I'd be working through contracts, and before you know it, you get in these different fields, and I think I came back to San Diego, and I was still going back and forth. And I said the story in the other end that after promoting a show for my band, the venue owner gave everybody a check and me an additional one. And sometimes in life, you'll get a lot of different things that will happen in tandem.
Yeah.
And for me, one of those was I was in this relationship, and this girl kept saying, you're a very bright dude, and you're doing so much for your friends with concerts and events, and you should really find a way to monetize off of it. That way you don't have to get any other side jobs or side hustles, and you can do what you love. You like making posters, you like making art, you like booking events, concerts. And I came up with the idea of the Black Cherry Music Group, which was my agency. And I started with an agency, small label, artist development, all those things that I had learned up in LA. And we did really good for a long time. I was thinking about you this weekend, Mike, and I was thinking about this quote, and I really need to cement this quote more. Never underestimate the power of the local band. And that needs to be written down in stone, as we were going, I've been able to travel all over the world when we were doing MySpace back in those days.
Oh,
and the reason I was able to do a lot of that, it was because the local band knows what's going on in that town. The local band knows who to stay away from. The local band can be genuine and open enough to tell you what not to fall into and what cool clubs are there and what stuff is not there, and what the golden fleece is in every town, and that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit about my company. And of course, that story will keep going based on your questions. Yeah. But up to that point, I think that's a good introductory part about myself.
That's really good. Chris, can you move your camera so that you're more your head's more towards the top?
More towards the top. Yeah.
Yeah, you have too much head space. The girls want to see you, Chris.
I'm sure they do, not this early.
There you go. That's perfect.
Better? Okay.
So, you just completed a Japan tour. How many shows did you play in Japan?
You know, it was cool because when I had talked to you, we only had 3, you know, and
Mhm.
everybody, including yourself, was like, man, this is going to be a tough one because, you know, clubs here book 3 months out, 4 months
Yeah.
out. And the thing is for us, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to make it. There was a few, we're going to say, things there, road bumps that we also didn't want to step on. So we had to be very surgical about the approach. I
Mhm.
couldn't really do my technical work. But, and, you know, I always have this saying, Mike, and I say this to other musicians that are always freaking out. I always say this to the boys whenever we get on these tours and we barely had enough money to get on the plane, right?
Yeah.
And I'd say, look, gentlemen, I go, the forces that create the power of what we make and the music that we do, it will all figure itself out. And I know this sounds madness, but the most important thing we can do is just to get on with it and just have the intention, have the feeling and the vibe that this is going to come together. I mean, you know, there's a mixture as well of intention
Mhm.
and the positivity of intention. And I feel with the mixture of all of it, you bring a good attitude, a good vibe. And then before you know it, I was with almost 10 shows, I think 9 shows, 10. I know it was a total of 13 by the time I
Yeah.
went home, but not all of them I was able to place online. Just, you know what I mean? Because of
Yeah.
proximity
Yeah.
clauses.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were here when some of them were booked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's how that worked out.
That's just amazing to me. So you played so you played 13 shows. You just came back from Japan, 13 very successful shows, and every club invited you guys back and said, "Hey, we're going to put you on the weekends and like that, right?"
Yeah, and you know, Mike, at the end of the day, there's 2 things that you need. Number 1, attitude. You have to have a good attitude, be proper, polite, and you also have to acknowledge stuff. You know, if you're wrong, you have to acknowledge that too. And number 2, unfortunately, you do got to have talent. If the music's not there and it's just not there, it's going to be a really hard fucking gig.
Yeah. About what you say
Yeah.
about having an attitude, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. This is, I think, kind of a problem for Americans and British men, especially, to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I messed up. You know, I'm sorry, really sorry about that." In Japan, that is so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even, you know, I used to go to business meetings, and something wouldn't be my fault. It had nothing to do with me, actually. But the first thing I would say is, "I'm really sorry about this. You know, I'll do my best to take care of it, but I'm very, very sorry about this. Moshiwake arimasen.
Wow.
Gomen nasai." And I would say that, and it saved my job many times doing that. I actually had a Japanese guy one time say to me, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. An American who says sorry."
Wow. Like that, huh?
Yeah, he lived in Chicago for many years. He spoke perfect English. But
You
okay,
know,
so um you toured Japan, and what are some tips about getting shows, meeting like club owners, getting shows, and um just arranging shows for the future? I noticed
okay.
that you guys have this awesome pamphlet.
Yeah, so that's, do you remember back in the 70s or six? Yeah, a little bit of the 80s, you go to a concert and you get a program.
Yeah.
So that is a program for talent buyers. That is a program for agents. That is a program for industry people, PR people, that
Mhm,
has everything you could possibly need to know about the band, you know, our
mhm,
numbers, what we do usually in regional markets or what we've been paid the highest amount, and sponsors and other companies that we work with. But see, that's the business end of my work
mhm.
that created that. Hmm.
Well, yeah, well, I was looking through it, and I thought, "Oh, this is a concert flyer." And then I started reading through it and I thought, no, I've never seen one of these. This is, it's got, can you see this? Posters for some of your big shows and all the data in there. So did you copy this idea from somebody, or is this kind of a standard way to do things?
When I used to work at Atlantic and I was there as an assistant, we'd have to make these books so we'd get a new artist, for example, right? In this era, this is around the time Beck first came out in the 90s. And this might have been, because Beck came out like 96, 97, maybe even 98. And this is passed after the Odelay tour. So they had signed another newer band that I was working in, that I was guitar tech / tour support. There was already a guy that was tour manager. He was younger than me, but he's a very responsible guy. And we'd have to put these booklets together, because when they get these new bands that are opening up for these national acts, this was back then. They don't do as much of this anymore as they did then. They throw a bunch of media parties. They'd have a pop-up. They rent the venue. They'd invite a bunch of agents, marketing people, advertising people, media, to come and see this new act that Atlantic's about to go big with, So whoever would come over, I mean, these concerts were like at 1 p.m. to 3 o'clock, you know what I mean? So these people would get a chance to watch the band privately in just a room of curators. And then they go home with, they'd get sponsored by Jack Daniels or whatever lunch company. And then for me, if I'm an industry guy, it's like, okay, cool. It's 1 o'clock. Hey, there's a mixer down at the Mint. Yeah, let's all go. We'd go there. We knew we were going to get our lunch paid for. Plus, we're doing something for work. So if we're a little late, it's excusable. We're drinking a little bit, watching the bands. And then we go home with swag from the band or the label. So they would create these booklets like the one that you have. So these agents would go home with it. Now, the booklet I gave you actually is a digital booklet. If you notice, there's a button at the bottom.
I noticed that.
And if you put your iPhone on it, it plays that whole concert that you're watching in the booklet. Yeah.
It is right there.
So if you tap your phone on it for a little bit till the NFC reads it,
really,
the back of your phone into it, yeah, it will. You'll be able to see a concert.
I'm an old person, Chris. When I saw that, I thought, "What's this?"
Yeah.
So when you came to Japan, you brought a bunch of these booklets?
No. So we're going to go over that. At the beginning of our conversation, I said to you that quote, to never underestimate the power of the local band. The first time we came to Japan, we reached out to a few singer-songwriter, acoustic people. And the thing is, there was a lot of Japanese musicians and bands that we liked, but their English was not dominated that highly. And so they would be not outlandish, but they wouldn't really engage because they felt embarrassed to say the wrong thing. So they would not engage by default. The few people that would answer the phone, believe it or not, were British musicians that lived out there. And a couple Americans from Chicago and New Orleans that invited us out there. And we only had one club that kind of invited us in, and then they said they also own the restaurant, so we were able to play their club in their restaurant.
Wow.
And everything else was just a bunch of coffee shops, before we started getting into the live houses. So we only played one live house and the rest little makeup shift events. But that's the thing that I was telling you a second ago too, is that you just have to have the intention, the most professional way that you can represent yourself, and things will take care of themselves. And we started playing one little coffee shop, then another guy got into it, and then the same people from that place showed up there. And then this other guy got a bright idea. He goes, hey, let's do a night while you're still here. And mind you, we had booked 2.5 weeks because we figured that's all we could afford. and we could figure out how to get around and get a good reading of the place. Plus, it was new for us because we've never been there, and
Yeah.
and by the time we got to that Friday, that event sold out, and they cooked us up with a local promoter who helped us get a bunch of other shows.
Mm-hmm.
And everything seemed pretty promising until I would say like year 2, year 3, we started seeing the grimmer part of the industry there. And we started finding out, and one thing the bands need to know is that there is a massive pay-to-play business there, or a massive, the way I say, if you can afford it and you want to buy that way, do it. There's a lot of promoters in Japan that will offer you to book all your shows, put all your shows together for a sum of money. Some of them will want a massive percentage of your guarantees that they can get. And some of them just take everything all together.
Yeah.
So I think in every business, and living in LA and doing shows at the, at the Viper, at the Whiskey and Key Club and all those rooms back in the day, there was a pay-to-play system where you'd have to guarantee a certain tickets in order to get the date. And if you sold over this amount, then you'd get a percentage of the ticket sales. There's always, I say, this whole industry that we're in, it's still a financial, there's going to be little investments you're going to have to make towards your career, but you have to be smart about how and who you pay, because some of these people are no different than the mob. They're not going to let you go. So you really got to read your agreements, and then also counter your agreements, counter an agreement that you're going to work for this period of time, and then that's it, one off. And unfortunately, some people will not like that, and it's hard when you're trying to get into bed with the right promoter, and they have their rules of operating. So that's another big one, that I feel artists really need to know. I'm going to say the other myth about touring in Japan is that everybody around the world thinks it's so expensive, and it's really not. Anywhere you go in the world is expensive if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Mike, no extensive amount of research, tools people send you are gonna outdo these few things I'm going to teach everybody. The most important thing you want to do if you're going further than Tokyo, if you want to do Tokyo and Osaka, I will say for your first time in Japan touring, stick in Tokyo. Just stick there. There's enough live houses in there.
Yeah.
And the clubs don't care. They're far away enough. That's one. Stick in Tokyo. If you start doing good next year and you have the budget, get into Osaka. You got 2 markets. That's like booking, LA and San Francisco, being able to go back and forth through those places, and once you start going that route, invest in the 14-day pass or 7-day pass of the train. That will get you to wherever you go. And we've stayed at every horrible hotel you could dream of. We've stayed at Airbnbs. We've stayed at pods. We've stayed at shared spaces, hostels. There's only one hostel that's incredible, and that's in Osaka, called Alchemy. But other than that, everything's been rough but clean. And we started eventually staying at APA Hotel. And those APA hotels are everywhere, budget friendly, and the time of the year that you should visit. February, March, usually a lot of people aren't necessarily out, but a good amount of people are out, and it's enough for you to not go too broke. Checking into rooms too, they're very strict. You know what I mean? So just send the manager to get the rooms, walk out, or 2 of you get the rooms, and then you guys can stay together in the same room.
Yeah.
But if not, they charge you almost a big amount to have a second person, almost $60, the price of the room. Yeah. For double occupancy.
So, okay. So let's say it's your first time to Japan.
Yep.
And so you hired somebody to arrange your shows?
The first time I did? No. No. So if you're, let's say I'm just talking to you and you want to go to Japan, Mike, and you're like, Christopher, what should I do? Hey, man, I recommend you going on the Facebook Japan music pages. and collaborate with local artists
Mhm.
and try to share some gigs, or have them use your band as an influence in the aspect of negotiation for them to land a date.
That's a smart idea.
Correct. And
Because
then the band has said the band can go to the club that they already play at and go, hey, this band that's doing pretty good, blah, 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 and from California is coming out here. Any chance that we can get them to play with us? Would you guys be interested in doing that? We'll do the marketing, but get the local bands to help with the marketing and promoting of the show. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And
So
then exchange a favor in your market, back home.
that's really good because the Japanese bands, just generally speaking, really have a high level of respect for bands from, America
Or England.
UK. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you guys are up on I don't know, a plateau or something like that. They're just like, this is like,
Well, the fantasy dream life, Mike, is to be able to tour and perform music. I'm going to say all the way to the small little towns in Wales, to small little villages in England, to small little towns in Mexico City, to little small metropolitan areas, and even places in Melbourne or Australia, Norway, people in Italy. People give us so much love and respect because they know how hard it is. Number one, the few that have been able to get out there, and the ones that haven't, fantasize and dream of doing that.
yeah.
And the thing is, to do that, it is expensive, Mike, but you also got to cut a lot of expenses back home. But things do get better. Our first tours, we'd barely get any guarantee. We'd get something, but not a lot. And sometimes that something was more than the guy that we were playing with was getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we knew we were doing some right.
Yeah.
Second year,
Hmm.
go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying second year, we usually get a backline to use, other than Japan that has all the backline you could ever need.
Oh,
But yeah, they give you all the gear. You just got to show up with your guitars, and that's it.
mhm.
And the guitars are cheap enough out there, man, that you don't have to. If you want to just buy something over there, you can for your tour, and bring it back home.
Wow. So,
Yep.
so let's say you go to Japan, you go to a club for the first time, and do you intentionally make the effort to meet the club manager?
Here's the catch to 122. No matter what, I always try to do some type of transaction with the owner or manager,
Mhm.
even if it's buying the photography or the video. So you get that email from them directly,
Mhm.
and then you can talk with them too. But a lot of the times, like you said, a lot of the managers are curious too.
Yeah.
So usually they don't come down. They'll come down for national acts, or they'll come down for touring acts. Just even if they watch 5-6 minutes just to see what you're all about. And you got to remember, these club owners, especially in Japan, they've seen everything.
Mhm.
There's nothing you're going to do that's going to crazily impress them. But they also can tell when something, the little light bulb
Yeah.
pops up, and they go, "Huh, I can make money with this." And that's what you want to do. You want to be in that
That's
light.
really good. So, did you make, in Japan, business card culture
Hmm.
is really big. So
I
when you
know
meet
that.
somebody, did you make a business card?
Every year I have. This is the first year, Mike, because everything was super last minute, that I didn't take business cards with me, but I always do
Yeah.
give a business card.
That's so important.
It is.
I'll bet you most bands do not take a business card.
No. Out of every, the only people that I've met with business cards are the buskers in the street all over the world.
That's
But
so
regular bands don't. You know what I have now, though, brother? I always make sure everybody in the band always has their guitar picks. And the guitar pick has the name of the band in the front, and it's got a little autograph in the back. See? Yep. And we hand these out to people. And this means so
see
much to
that?
them. You have no idea. Oh, yeah. I threw some in there. That's from the Ernie Ball Company, and our logo on the
Yeah.
other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we hand that out, and they find us on the internet, and it's easier for them to remember us. This is mostly
That's
for
just
fans.
That's so smart because in Japan, the Japanese people don't know. I mean, they think like, yeah, well, Americans and British people don't have business cards. But, you know, when a band comes and the band member hands them that business card, that says two things. One is I understand your culture. Two is I am a smart businessman that you can depend on. And that is so important.
Yep. And trust me, you know, the other thing is, so I went to the Beatles Museum in Liverpool when I was working there as a curator, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was walking around with the exhibits, and there was a business card that I got from Pete Best, you know, the original member of the Beatles.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's telling me about Brian and how he used to tell them that they always had to take the cards, you know. And the one that always remembered having the cards was Paul. He'd always remember to bring the cards. He's the only one you could always count on to always go, you know, have his card in the pocket.
Wow.
You know, he was the good boy that Brian could always trust, and he'd always put a stack of cards in Brian and Paul's pocket. Somebody was talking, oh, Paul, there you go. Give me a card from Brian, you know. And so I go, well, can I take a photo of the card? He goes, yeah, go on. Check this out. Right back. Let me see if I have that here. If it's here, it's going to be really cool. So he let me take a photo of his business card. Let me see where it is. And I mean, I'm telling you, these people in Japan really, like you said, the business card is so important. And for us, I mean, we've already been there a few times, so it's not like we're going to places we've never been to, you know. We've already been to. We played every venue that we were at. There was one new venue out of the whole thing. Anyways, so he gives us this business card, and we made a replica of it. So we have a replica of the original Beatles business card.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, man. But of course, you know, with the falling doves, and we got it to the font and logo too.
So wait, Chris.
Oh, I found it, Mike.
Okay.
Check it out. So the original Beatles business card said "The Beatles," right there.
That's perfect.
In that same font. That's it. It's that simple.
Wow. Okay, so Chris, I'd like to continue this conversation in part 2. Are we okay for that?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll be
Okay,
back.
so ladies and gentlemen, I have a guy I'm interviewing today, Chris Leyva. He's from the band The Falling Doves. Wait a minute, can you see that? Falling Doves.
And CEO of the Black Cherry Music Group, an agency based out of Los Angeles, California.
This band is going to be famous, really famous. And then you're going to remember this interview on the Mike Rogers Show. Thanks, Chris. I'll see you back here tomorrow. So we're going to get more into the nitty-gritty about how to do a Japan tour, okay?
All right. I'll be wearing my rings. See you guys soon.
Cool. All right, so I'll talk to you later. See you later, man. Thanks.
Rock and roll, brother.